and I'm so thrilled to be here today with Karlyn Hixson from BookPal. As you start to come on today to today's event, I want to alert you to a couple of things. One is that we will be using the chat throughout today's broadcast, and we welcome your engagement and interaction. One of the things I'll ask is that you use the drop-down menu to select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your questions and comments throughout today's broadcast. We would love to give you a shout out and say hello. So if you can take a moment to find the chat and let us know where you're calling in from. We are scheduled today for 30 minutes with Karlyn. However, if you have lots of questions, we may stay on a little bit longer. So welcome in Southern California. And we're in Michigan today. Karlyn, you're also in California, is that correct?
Yes, we're in Irvine, California.
Awesome. Well, Richard, welcome from Ohio. I think you're from Cleveland. Maybe it's Columbus. I'm not remembering for sure which place you're from, but welcome to you, Richard. Good to see you again. And hello to Flip in Vermont. Glad to have you with us today. We're going to get started with our content in just a few minutes, but we would invite you to say hello from wherever you're calling in from today. I'm so excited to provide some significant value to authors on the topic of bulk book sales. So my name is Becky Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence. I'm with Karlyn Hixson. I'm sad to say I don't know your title, but you're one of the best people I've met from BookPal, and I'm so thrilled to have you with me.
Thanks, Becky. No, it's such a pleasure to be here, and I so enjoyed meeting you this summer and think Weaving Influence does an amazing job, so it's a pleasure.
Well, we want to dive in as people are still coming. Just a reminder to everyone, we will be recording today. We're also broadcasting live on Facebook. So if you have some author friends who were not able to make this broadcast today, you can feel free to share the link with them later. We will also have a PDF of today's slides, and we will be getting those out to all of our registered attendees after today's event. So I want to just welcome you throughout today's call to feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat. If you do so, please use the drop down and select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your comments. It looks like most of the comments that came through so far are only to panelists. So if you'd like to do some networking with other authors on this call, please be sure to select all panelists and attendees when you type in your chat. So Karlyn, tell us about BookPal.
Awesome. Thank you again, Becky. It's such a pleasure. And welcome, everyone. Just very excited to be here talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, bulk sales. But really, above that, books. Books are super important. BookPal is a specialty bulk retailer based in Southern California, as Becky mentioned. We really, truly believe in the power of books to ignite continuous learning and growth. We care deeply about all books, but for the most part do typically tend to work with a lot of business authors, serving a lot of our corporate clients, as well as educational titles, as that's another large part of the business we work with. So just a little bit about BookPal. We started 14 years ago in 2005. Tony DiCostanzo is our president. At that time, he started it more so focused on healthcare guides and serving that space to help educate larger corporate clients and employees about ways to keep healthy. But then in 2008, realized there's a huge opportunity, as there are millions of titles in the world, that can really help people to further connect, learn, and grow and elevate themselves. So started pivoting towards the corporate space, educational space. And really from there, we do work with a variety of titles, health and wellness, political, religious, self-help, you name it. We've probably done an order for it or promoted it at some point on our blog or email newsletter. We work with over 5,000 organizations currently, and it's growing every day. And we've sold over 10 million books in our history. And I love it. Internally, we really see each book sale as another life that's been touched. So that's kind of how we view it. You know, obviously we like to keep track for ourselves and keep challenging ourselves and growing our list of clients that we work, but every book sale really is a life that's being touched.
So
So
Karlyn, let's
yeah,
talk about what a bulk sale is. And I'm
yes.
curious for those authors on the line, we meant to ask this at the beginning. If you can let us know right away why it was important for you to be here and what your particular interest is in this topic. And if you can do so by selecting all panelists and attendees when you write your response, we would love to know and make sure that we make the comments and conversation focused on you today. So would love to see why it was important for you to be here today. And let's do some, early defining of what a bulk sale is.
Absolutely. So a bulk sale we define as anything 25 copies and up. Obviously, authors are told that pre-orders are super important, and individual consumer pre-orders in particular. So the one-offs at your favorite indie or Barnes & Noble or Amazon, for example. But a lot of those retailers may or may not be able to specialize or help you in the logistical aspect and the reporting for bulk sales, which is where we specialize. So anything 25 copies and up can be a school organized event that they're ordering for, can be a speaking event or sales conference for which they might need 500 copies, or it can be an organizational event. Usually those are the three that we end up helping with. And it can either be an individual author ordering or an organizational contact ordering. And on top of that, there are times where we help authors do a bulk sale, but it could be going to individuals for either giveaway use or for, like, let's say you're having a launch event and the ticket bundles in the book. We can also help with that. So, but bulk orders in general, 25 copies and up.
Great. So
Yes.
we're going to talk now about 4 easy steps that you can use to focus on bulk sales if you're an author. And I love just how simple you've made this.
Yes, absolutely. So here are just, 4 steps that I feel can be helpful in organizing your bulk order strategy. The first and foremost is just identifying your niche. As an author, I've definitely heard authors say, my book is for everybody. And as much as we want to make sure that it does have wide appeal, there does need to be a definition of, who are your primary audience members and targets that you really want to reach and really want to have buy your book. Who are the secondary and tertiary audiences? We used to do this routinely in-house at the publisher with whom I worked, and it really does help both authors and your team understand who you're trying to reach, what you're trying to say, and how you're trying to incent them to purchase your book. You really want to plan early as well. The logistics behind bulk orders, I've learned a lot even in the year and a half I've been at BookPal. Even coming from the industry, there is a lot that needs to happen. Both just allowing time for your books to get there on time every time, but also, ensuring stock is available, communicating that to the people who do stock and demand planning at the publisher is super important. So really the earlier the better. I always tell people at least 2 weeks out is the best. Sometimes obviously that can't always happen, but even earlier than that is ideal. And then promotion, as an author, I'm sure most authors know this, but you really are your biggest and best advocate for your book, and you have to be, because you're the knowledge base. You are the person who is promoting this book, who does believe in it greatly, who kind of needs to continue selling it not only to the end consumer and reader, but to your team that's helping to support you. What was the purpose in writing this book? How is it going to change those people's lives and help them further connect and learn and grow? That is really important, just to understand that and continue defining that to reach greater audiences and readers. And finally, a big opportunity is just adding your book to your contracts. And by that, I mean, for speaking events, it's a huge opportunity to bundle in your book with either your speaking fee, or at least make sure it's in the contract that you sign with an organization. So if a large organization or corporation with whom you work or have a relationship wants to bring you in to speak and you have a new book, or even a book that's been out, definitely make sure that you're putting that book purchase into the contract to make sure that you're capitalizing on that opportunity, because not only do you have an opportunity to influence the people in the audience to listen, but to have your book at the end of that and be able to greater use the teachings and messages that you're promoting in that talk, it really is a no-brainer. So that's another way to continue making bulk easy.
Great. So let's talk about this black box and logistics. I know that there are often some complications with authors, particularly if they have bulk sale opportunities internationally or, if they're self-published. So talk to us about how BookPal can help.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a major one, and we really do pride ourselves on being super dedicated to the logistics because we believe that authors and partners with whom we work shouldn't have to worry about this. That's part of the reason you want to work with someone like BookPal. So some of the logistics that come up on a daily basis, you mentioned international, which is definitely something that we are continuously learning and growing from and looking for different opportunities. First and foremost, we would check with the publisher to make sure that worldwide rights are available because there are times for certain books that we're not able to help in certain territories. So we do want to make sure we do that, and we're in constant contact with our publishing partners to ensure that. Once that's cleared, we are absolutely able to help figure out the customs, the duties, the taxes, all of that up front. In most cases, is easier to ensure smoother delivery. And again, as an author or your end client, you don't want them having to deal with that. We also have currently found more ways to reduce shipping costs internationally. So again, it does depend on the territory, the weight of the shipment, and the quantity and kind of the country. It does vary country to country, but we're continuously improving this process to make it seamless and also save our customers money because we want to do that at any time, and the more lead time, the better. So outside of that, domestically, I would say some of the common things that we get are for hotel deliveries or event venues. Those have specific need by date windows, and those are super important. We make sure we have a high touch, white glove service of those orders to make sure that you're not going to be charged for storage fees, which can apply depending on where you're shipping. So we routinely check with the client placing it, but if the author for some reason may not know, we're happy to call that venue or that hotel and ensure that we are making sure that you're not going to be charged for anything additional and that your books arrive on time every time for that event. Additionally, we routinely do stock checks as that can be a concern. Recently I had something happen earlier this week actually, where a book just came out last week and they were already reprinting. So there was a little bit of a stopgap on when the books were going to be available for a very quick turnaround. So all of that we take into great consideration. We just want to be that partner for you to make sure that, hey, BookPal's on it, because sometimes, depending on where you place those bulk orders, you may or may not have somebody on the other end of the line who's going to pick up and help you when something happens at the forefront of the order, or maybe UPS misplaces a carton, which can happen. We're going to chase it down, make sure that we have those books for you. So it's kind of just an overview of the black box of logistics, but definitely something that we take very seriously, and half of our staff is dedicated to working through these issues on a daily basis.
Got it. Well, I'm seeing some questions and comments come in, and a friend of ours, Karen, is mentioning that she's had a few hiccups internationally with customs and taxes that she was blindsided by. So it seems to me like Karlyn, partnering with BookPal, you wouldn't have any surprises as it relates to those things. She also has a question here about bestseller counts, and I do believe we're going to get to that a little bit later.
Yes, absolutely. Reporting is definitely important. And actually, it's on this slide right here. So some of the ways that we want to maintain sustainability with bulk sales, well, I'll just start with reporting since it's in the middle, but yeah, reporting is super important. And I think it is important as an author just to know all of the different options. You would definitely get a great discount going directly to the publisher, and I would never tell anyone not to, but I think knowing that those sales are not going to be reported simply because the publisher can't report its own sales is important, because you do want to spread that around, and you do want to work with providers like BookPal, and there are many great options, and I definitely suggest diversifying at launch because it's smart. But yeah, we report all of our sales to the ABA, American Bookseller Association, to BookScan, and to the New York Times. Obviously, BookScan is domestic sales, so that is a U.S. snapshot of reporting, but we do weekly report all sales from the week prior. Additionally, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but leveraging your network, understanding how many different people and groups you yourself know, whether it's an alumni list or A friend has a huge email newsletter or social media reach, or you know somebody who runs a podcast, making sure that you're organizing those asks and looking for opportunities to organically mention your book, both at pre-launch, at launch, and long-term. I mean, there's going to be a large portion of every author's audience who may not hear about the book right at publication, and we know that's an important time, obviously for bestseller purposes, but really the longevity and the life cycle of a book is years to come. So if you don't catch everyone at first, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be interested in your book later. So looking at it from the long-term perspective is really important. And then additionally, just making sure that those niches are being identified, and also that you're thinking of ways to reach those different audience members. People talk about things on, Reddit forums, for example. I used to have some of my authors do AMAs, Ask Me Anything, just because there's people who check those every single day from a variety of different industries or walks of life. So that's just one example. But thinking of ways to reach people where they already are and where they're having conversations where they could discover your book is definitely what you want to do. And then lastly, that speaking event, super important. Looking for opportunities to create those opportunities, but also leverage existing relationships with organizations who would want to have you come in. And we'll definitely talk about a couple different author profiles today with whom we worked.
I can't wait to hear those.
Awesome. So and I touched on a couple of these, but leveraging your network, I would just encourage every author to write a list and make sure that, you're touching, these are just some examples, but companies mentioned in a book. That's one of the first things I do if I'm working with an author at BookPal. Usually they've already covered it or thought of it, but if we have contacts in our database, because we do work with a lot of different corporate clients, and I see that the author has mentioned them in their book, I'm going to shoot them an email and just be like, hey, just wanted to make sure that you knew about this book. We're working with this author. We're super excited. The book comes out on X date. Would you want a sample? Because that spurs the thought and the conversation of a bulk order, or at least, having it in their hand for, further consideration. Social network connections are super important, continuing to reach people organically, putting your pre-order links for all the different retailers, in anything that you're doing as an author is super important. I know your publishers will let you know this, but individual pre-orders are super important and definitely need to be a focus, especially if you are going to be doing bulk sales and you have bestseller aspirations. You definitely want to have individual consumer demand for your book and not just be focused on bulk orders. Podcast appearances. Really, podcasts are huge. I think everybody knows that at this point, and there's so many opportunities to have a conversation about your book, who you're trying to reach, and that's an opportunity, to checking with people that you know in your network. Hey, can you send me an intro to this person? I'd love to be on their podcast and send them an early copy of my book. That kind of thing is super, super helpful, and especially in the author network, I do feel like a lot of authors know other authors, so it's not that hard, to find the right person to kind of get you that intro. If there's a specific podcast you'd like to be considered for, or have your publisher pitch you, they definitely would have those contacts as well. Blog posts and guest blog posts. I'm a huge fan of blog posts. We have a blog ourselves at BookPal, and we definitely look for ways to feature authors in author Q&A. So if it's something that you're interested in, my email is going to be at the end of the presentation, but I'd love to hear from you, and it's something we'd love to consider you for. Media outreach is also something that a lot of publishers would be focused on, or if you were going to hire, outside help, obviously that's something that is important. Does have great reach, obviously, with some of those outlets, in the thousands or millions even. And then newsletters. I think newsletters are super sticky, and email. I think it's important for every author to create their own email list and kind of build their own audience of people who are really excited about what you do, what you books, and want to support you. That's a great asset to build. And lastly, just exchanging books for speaking. So there are times, obviously, where maybe your budget or speaking fee might not work for a client, but they would consider bringing you in if you would waive part of that fee for a bulk order. And again, that's a win-win for you, especially at launch, because that's a given and it's a bulk sale that you're going to get reported. And you're also going to get in front of people and have them take away your book at the end of it. So another great way to continue the bulk sale opportunity.
So before we go on, Karlyn, I want to make sure that we get to this really important question about pricing
Yes.
and fees to work with BookPal. So can you talk to those who are here with us today about how BookPal supports authors and what the costs are associated with that? I think they're going to
Absolutely.
like the answer.
Yeah, so we actually don't charge any author with whom we work. It's not part of our model. We truly do believe in making sure that our clients and our audience are aware of the new and forthcoming books, as well as, perennial favorites. So there is no charge. With that said, we do work with publishers directly. So the discounting would just need to make sense for us. And that's something we can have a conversation depending on with whom you're published, what the wholesale discount is available to us. Because there's just a slight margin made on the book sale itself. But then with that comes the partnership of the logistics and the services we provide to make sure your events are taken care of properly, the books arrive on time, and we would also look for opportunities to promote you in our email, blog, social, and website if we work with you. So definitely no cost. It just comes down to the discounting available as the wholesaler from the publisher.
So,
Great question.
Karlyn, for those who might be self-published authors, are there
Yes.
possibilities for self-published authors to partner with BookPal? And if so, how does that work?
Great question, too. There are possibilities. I would say for any self-published authors to reach out to me directly, and my email will be at the end of the presentation. But again, it would just come down to discounting. So, typically speaking, we do receive about 60 to 65% off from publishers. So we would just need to have a conversation about what the possibilities are for working with us as a self-published author. But we have worked with self-published authors, especially, if it's a POD, print on demand title. We just make sure that we have that information on your book page so that any client wishing to order your title does know if there's a couple extra days in the process just for the printing. We make sure that we have that up front so people know.
Great, thanks so much. And for those who might be self-published who are here, if you have any additional questions or follow-ups that you'd like to ask, please feel free to put those in the chat and we will take some time for questions later on again.
Absolutely. Yes, so I think I mentioned this already, but definitely avoiding "my book is for everybody" is important. That said, I do realize certain books do have wider mass appeal. But I agree that it's really important to kind of understand, okay, well, who is my primary audience and who's the person who's going to find this most useful? What demographic, what age are they? What kind of industry are they in? Thinking like more along that that frame of mind to reach the right people, at least first, is really important just for the future success of your book. And here are just a couple examples, because I know, identifying your niche. Okay, well, what does that really mean? Does your book touch on or appeal to, people who would be in nonprofits or have community programs where they would maybe be given a grant each year that they could purchase your title and make it available to wider groups of people for a community-based reads program, for example, or a literacy initiative? Do you talk about different associations or labor unions, or could you reach out to those groups that might be interested in your book? I've worked on books in the past about, Lyme disease or like heart disease, and I've reached out to association groups locally or nationally just to see, hey, would they consider putting this book in their newsletter just to let people know? You'd be surprised, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, but it's highly effective because that's a super targeted audience that would care about the content of your book. College, first-year experience, and university-wide reads. Obviously, those can be hard to get into, but there are FYE coordinators and directors who are always looking for new books to consider. And if you land one of those orders, it is a large order because there are several thousand students generally reading those books every year. So there are great opportunities in that space. Some of the other considerations for your niche would just be geographic or maybe country specific. Does your book content focus on a specific region in the US or internationally? Are there groups who would be congregating online talking about that? You want to make sure that it's there. Socioeconomic or gender specific reach. Just want to consider, who am I looking for? Again, where can I find them online, or where could I either advertise to or reach them through podcast or social media. And then conferences. I think conferences are a great way to get in front of a large number of people. Obviously, I know depending on the conference, there are costs associated, but there are ways to get your book in front of people, whether it's email or a booth or walking the floor. And then lastly, I just have an example of industry specific. So I worked with an author actually in-house at a publisher years ago, and then here too, because she's one of our clients at BookPal. And she has a lot of, Silicon Valley tech contacts. And so she just did an updated edition this fall. So we reached out again. Hey, we know you purchased the edition in 2017. We'd love to send you a sample if you want to see the updated edition for consideration. We're really most grateful for your support. It's just a matter of reaching out to people who would be interested or who would have already maybe purchased the previous edition in that case.
Got it. That's really helpful.
Yes. And then I know we sort of talked about reporting, but again, we do report weekly to NPD BookScan, formerly Nielsen, but now NPD BookScan, the New York Times, and the American Booksellers Association. So if anybody does have questions about that, they can definitely reach out. But it's a weekly process for us, and anything from the previous week would be reported on a Monday. And I believe the sales week technically is Saturday through Sunday. So let's say you have a book going on sale next week. Anything that would be sent to us after bulk sale would be for first week. And then from then on, as we continue to partner with you, basically each week that a sale would occur, we would be reporting it the Monday following.
Perfect.
All right, so here's our first author profile. So this is, if anybody knows, Jocko Willink on the left and Leif Babin on the right, and they are from a company called Echelon Front. So actually, I had the pleasure of working with them in-house at Macmillan in 2015. They first came in, pitched their book, Extreme Ownership, which is a huge mega bestseller. Thought they were so dynamic, so fascinating. They fought overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. They actually did work with Chris Kyle, who was from that movie American Sniper, if anybody's familiar. And they did some really, obviously battlefield experiences, but they saw that they had a lot of interesting stories and tactical examples that would help everybody who's in a leadership role. Whether, you're in retail or tech and banking, finance, aerospace engineering, the whole variety of different corporate environments one might find themselves. This is about how to succeed as a team and how to lead so that you win as a team. So that book came out in October 2015. They recognized, obviously, with their military ties and some of the ties they had in the media. At the time, Leif's wife worked at Fox, so they happened to get on a lot of Fox news channels and media outlets, which definitely helped spread the word. But outside of that, they really understood that it was about each individual that was going to read this book and tell somebody else about it. So they worked hard to kind of form an organic approach and get a lot of Goodreads and Amazon reader reviews because people really read those. One of my favorite ways of finding out about new books is really just, kind of that organic peer-to-peer recommendation, as well as seeing things on social media, which they also focused on. I remember when I met Jocko and Leif, I think Jocko was not on social media, wasn't too interested in it, and now he's like one of the most famous people on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think he has several 100,000 followers. He has a podcast. He has other products. So there's been other opportunities as a result of taking that kind of grassroots approach. And another thing they did very smartly was because they did have their company, Echelon Front, they were able to offer books in exchange for lowering their speaking fees, and they got a lot more clients and a lot more speaking events and gigs as a result of that. But they also sold a lot more books. So there was kind of a steady flow happening for Extreme Ownership from the outset. They now have, I think, collectively 5 books. Jocko has written a couple kids' books, Way of the Warrior Kid. They also had another book come out last fall called The Dichotomy of Leadership. about how leaders also have to kind of be followers and look to the team. So they've just done a lot of creative things to really reach audience members on a personal level, and also look to their network to get the book further out there. So just one example, and we continue to work with them to this day. They're awesome.
So I want to watch the time a little bit, Karlyn. And I did have
Yes.
someone earlier with a really important question, I thought. Stuart was asking how we obtain, so what recommendations you might have for authors who want to generate bulk sales but are unsure about how to obtain engagements that would result in bulk sales. And I know from working with authors that this is one of the biggest questions that authors face. They want bulk sales, but they're not sure how to get them. So I don't know if we can, as we wrap up the half hour, skip
Yeah,
over and address that
definitely.
issue. And then if there are any other pressing questions, if folks can put those in the chat as well. We want to be respectful of the planned 30-minute time for this event today.
Absolutely. No, and that's a great question. I think first and foremost, starting with kind of identifying your network. Who do you know who could help you book more engagements, both organically and maybe even looking to opportunities to either hire a lecture agent that would be pitching you, or to get in even like a local Toastmasters group where you could, work on some of your speaking if that's something you're interested in, and network with people who would know the people who'd be booking you for those events. I think those are great ways. And I think also, I'm happy to chat with any author who has any questions and kind of brainstorm. We're looking to launch not a speakers bureau, but more of an initiative to help connect some of the clients we have with the authors that we work with. So for those kinds of events, because we do routinely get questions from corporate clients asking for recommendations. And if there's a way that we can help to spread the word about your book, we're happy to do that. And we would just hope we'd be able to help with the book sale too.
So Karen is mentioning that she highly recommends that aspiring speakers check out NSA, National Speakers Association, to work on your craft and your business. So
Yes.
great point. Also, Karlyn, I'm seeing that we have an extra digit in your telephone number here on the slide. So
Oh, sorry.
if you could correct the telephone number, and Kelly, if you can go ahead and put that in the chat for everyone. I want to also to ask a
Yes.
question. Someone was asking about the first year experience that you referenced in relation to college and outreach. And our question was, does BookPal do any pitching to those types of opportunities, or only mainly the logistical side once the bulk order has been booked?
That's a great question. We do handle primarily the logistical side. That said, though, I mean, we obviously would be happy to help. It's just not something where every day we have somebody dedicated pitching different books to FYE instructors. But we do have connections to some FYE instructors who have ordered from us, and we would be happy, to let them know about certain book. I guess it's just more not like a formal agreement where we're like pitching, X number of books every single week, just because that's not our current business model. But we do have connections, and it's something that I'd be happy to discuss as an opportunity. And I know the phone number is just an extra 0, so it's 7213. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Kelly got that in the chat for us. So
Cool.
please take a look at the chat if you're looking for Karlyn's phone number and email. And I will be sending out a follow-up after today's event and include all of these resources. I'm wondering just really quickly, Karlyn, if you could give us a high-level overview of the types of promotion that BookPal does, because you've mentioned several times
Yes.
the networks, the organizations that are looking to BookPal to find books to order. So if you could just give us a few really quick bullet
I can
points
hear
as
you.
we finish up at the time of the types of promotion that BookPal is doing for your authors.
Absolutely. So high level, Author Connect Chat Series is a promotional series that we book authors for free. We have a monthly chat with them. They do a presentation, and then we have a Q&A. We are currently booked through, I want to say August or September next year. So at the moment, we're a little bit on hiatus of booking, but that said, I'd still be happy to connect with anybody to consider for future. Outside of that, we do monthly picks in health and wellness, business, education, politics, religion. We pick usually 6 to 9 books in each of those categories, and we send emails to our clients. Again, totally free. We just want to highlight new books for them as well so that they can consider. Outside of that, we also do an education catalog yearly. So we choose new content and send those out both digitally and physically to educators, librarians, and curriculum directors. And we have a digital business catalog that also does kind of the same thing, where we promote that to talent development and leadership directors who would be looking for new books. We also go to ATD, so that's the Association for Talent Development. We have a booth every year. Next year it's in May in Denver. We do hand sell, not sell in the booth, but we have the titles on hand, and we make sure we're passing them out to people who want to consider them for purchase, as well as choosing a pick list. There's one more thing. Oh, just blog, Q&A, social media. Those are always things that we're happy to do. And again, just contact me, and then we can figure out the best way forward.
Got it. Thank you so much, Karlyn, for sharing your expertise with us today. BookPal is a tremendous partner for authors who are looking for logistical and marketing support for bulk sales. And I hope that many of you who have been with us today or are watching on Facebook will contact Karlyn and BookPal to find out more. For any of you on the call who might be looking for support on your ongoing book marketing efforts or publicity efforts, I'd also be glad to talk with you. I'm Becky at Weaving Influence, and I think I know most everyone who's here today. I'm not sure for those who might be watching later, but I'm honored that you came and hope this was a useful hour for you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.